In late 2025, the cybersecurity world got hit with a vulnerability so serious it earned a nickname that sent shivers down everyone's spine, a name that reminded us of one of the internet's worst bugs ever. Today, we're going to break down MongoBleed, a critical flaw that left thousands upon thousands of databases completely exposed.
And when I say thousands, I mean it. The sheer scale of this was just wow. Security researchers from Census found at least 87,000 MongoDB servers connected to the public internet, all just sitting there potentially vulnerable. That's 87,000 front doors unlocked, leading straight to a company's crown jewels.
So why that scary name, MongoBleed? Well, it's because just like the infamous Heartbleed bug, this flaw literally let attackers bleed out random bits of a server's memory. And look, that comparison isn't just for dramatic effect, it's a direct measure of how bad this was. This wasn't some minor glitch, it was a full-blown, catastrophic data leak. All right, so here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to follow the whole story, from start to finish. We'll dig into what made MongoBleed so dangerous, see exactly how the bad guys could use it, and then check out the global fallout. After that, we'll get into the most important part, how to fix it. And finally, we'll ask what this whole mess teaches us about cybersecurity today. Let's kick things off with the basics. What exactly was MongoBleed? Okay, so the official name is a mouthful, CVE 2025-14847. But in simple terms, it's a flaw that let anyone, and I mean anyone, on the internet grab little pieces of data right out of a server's live memory without needing a password or anything. The magic phrase here is uninitialized memory. You know, this isn't empty space. Think of it like a whiteboard that wasn't fully erased. It's full of leftover data, and that's exactly where the secrets were hiding.
So, how could an attacker actually pull this off? You might be surprised by how simple the whole process really was.
It was a pretty clever three-step trick. First, the attacker sends a specially designed compressed message to the server. Now, the weakness was buried in how the server handles a type of compression called zlib. A tiny error in the code makes the server miscalculate the message's size, and that little mistake leads straight to step 3. The server replies, but it sends back way more than it should, including a raw chunk of that unerased memory.
And we're not talking about digital junk here. This was the good stuff. That leaked memory could have anything the database had recently touched: passwords, in plain text, private authentication keys, credentials for cloud services like AWS or Azure, even sensitive personal info. It was basically a treasure chest of a company's deepest secrets just sitting there for the taking.
And here is the absolute scariest part, the part that made this so critical. All of this happens before the server even asks for a username or password. An attacker didn't need to be clever and steal credentials. If a database was vulnerable and on the internet, it was a wide open target. That incredibly low bar for entry is what made MongoBleed a true nightmare.
Okay, we've seen the nuts and bolts of the hack. Now let's pull back the camera and really look at the damage. Just how widespread did this crisis get? This wasn't just a problem in one country. It was everywhere. The US had the most exposed servers, sitting at around 20,000. China was right behind with 17,000, and Germany had a big chunk too. It just goes to show this was a problem that hit global infrastructure hard. And get this, when you look at cloud environments, the numbers are even wilder. Security researchers found that a shocking 42% of the cloud setups they looked at had at least one vulnerable MongoDB server. 42%. That's nearly half. In the cloud, everything is connected, so one compromised database can be the front door to an entire network. You know, the sad part is we've kind of seen this movie before with MongoDB. If we look back between 2016 and 2017, thousands of MongoDB databases were hit by ransomware because they were left exposed to the internet with no security. MongoBleed is a totally different bug, technically, but it comes from the same root cause, leaving databases open to the public internet with insecure settings. All right, enough doom and gloom. The community saw this huge crisis and had to act, and act fast. So let's talk about the solutions. This was the big question on every system administrator's mind. How do you stop the bleed? And the answer involved both a quick fix and some longer-term thinking. Basically, you had two choices. The real fix, the one everyone needed to do, was to upgrade to a patched version of MongoDB, period. But if for some reason you couldn't upgrade right that second, there was a temporary band-aid: turn off zlib compression and lock down network access with a firewall. Now, disabling that compression could have a small impact on performance, sure, because it means more data over the network, but hey, a little slowdown was a heck of a lot better than getting your entire database stolen.
And to their credit, MongoDB moved fast. They pushed out patches for all of these major versions you see here. The message to administrators was crystal clear. Find your version on this list and update immediately.
But, and this is a really big but, there was a catch. For anyone running an old, unsupported version of MongoDB, like 4.2 or older, you were out of luck. There was no patch. There was never going to be a patch. Those systems were and still are permanently vulnerable. The only fix is to migrate off them completely.
Okay, so now that the dust has settled a bit, let's step back and ask, what's the big takeaway from all this? What did we learn?
Well, MongoBleed wasn't just some freak accident. It was a perfect storm of 3 classic security mistakes. You had a memory bug in the code, you had default settings that left the door open, and you had databases just hanging out on the public internet. You put those 3 things together, and you've got a recipe for disaster we see over and over again.
And that brings us to our final crucial lesson. The old way of thinking, building a big wall around your network and trusting everything inside. That model is broken. The future of security is something called zero trust, where you don't trust anyone by default. You verify everything, constantly. Which really leaves us with a pretty sobering final question, doesn't it? How many other systems are still out there just waiting for the next bleed, all because they're built on that old, broken idea of trust?